Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Well, we are about to enter into the summer gaming news period for 2022. There is not going to be an E3 this year, and who knows if it will be returning in the future, but there's still already scheduled and bound to be more gaming news events that will be going on this summer, and plenty of things to at least be curious about, if not look forward to. And I think there's going to be a significant number of announcements and reveals, as always, and so I am offering again this time I'm focusing it. In years past, I've given my predictions and my wish list, and it's been kind of willy-nilly and just kind of pie-in-the-sky fantasy talk. But this year, I'm changing my focus. I'm focusing in a little bit more, and I'm gonna just make predictions. All along the way, I'll mention some things that I would like, but I'm gonna make some predictions about what I think is gonna happen. Now, I should be really clear that I'm not an analyst. I don't aspire to be an analyst of the video games industry. My predictions should not be given any weight, and some of you will undoubtedly consider them ignorant and uneducated. But I am doing at least some research this year as I try to make more plausible, reasoned, and evidenced guesses as to what might be announced, what news we might get. I will be reacting to a number of different kind of video game events throughout the summer from here until August 12th. That's THQ Nordic's event. That's just kind of where I'm making the cutoff somewhat arbitrarily right now. And then we'll see, what predictions I put out there that actually came true. But if you want all my reactions to the various video games news that I feel like I have something to say about, you'll want to tune into the Christian Geek Central podcast. That's where I don't want to say most, that's where some of it will be that I just feel like is not worth making a video about. But anyway, the big stuff I plan to react to. So let's start. Let's go through the categorized lists of my predictions, starting with the big two, Sony and Microsoft. Well, Sony has these new PS Plus tiers that have been announced that are going to give users access to older games in their library, depending on which tier you choose. That news has already been out there for a while. But these new tiers are going to launch in Asian markets, excluding Japan. They're targeting May 23rd. For Japan, they're targeting June 1st. For the Americas, they're targeting June 13th. And for Europe, they're targeting June 22nd. My prediction with these services, despite the fact that they're going to be featuring games from the PS1, PS2, and through streaming, PS3, and PSP also, consoles. And therefore, they'll be demonstrating that they are capable of running these games through emulation or whatever systems they're going to use. The PS5, at least, will be capable of running these games. However, my prediction is that when these things launch, these tiers launch, they will not be accompanied by the option to buy these games a la carte, just outright. You will only have access to these on their modern console if you subscribe to the service. Now, that may change, but my prediction is that at launch, there's no way they're going to allow people to buy these things a la carte, and I think people will certainly complain. Maybe it'll get changed at some point, but that's my prediction for now. And also, no tier. They haven't announced yet. They're like hundreds of games is what they're saying, but they haven't announced what those games are. And they said like hundreds of, I don't know, the most enjoyable games. I'm like, really? Most enjoyable according to who? So I'm really skeptical about what games are going to be included on those lists that might appeal to me. And I'm going to say right now that there will be no tier that will include any Shadow Hearts games. Have you never heard of those? That's why they're not going to be included. But they're some of my favorite games from the PS2 generation. No Shadow Hearts games. Nor will there be any PS2 or earlier comic book superhero licensed games, except for Spider-Man. I think they could probably do Spider-Man because they're Sony, and Sony kind of owns the rights to do media featuring Spider-Man. But I think if there's anything that's featuring DC comic book heroes or Marvel comic book heroes, or even some of the the third tier publishers stuff, that's not going to be among the games that are in this list because of licensing issues. I think they're just not going to want to go through the hassle. Nor will there be, and I think this is a little bit more of a bold prediction, because you would think this would make sense to have that on one of these tiers, but I also believe they will not have either of the Champions of Norath games. These are Diablo clone games that were made by Sony. Sony Online Entertainment, Sony Interactive Entertainment. I don't know, but they were made by Sony. But ironically, I believe they will not be included in any of those tiers. That's the jaded part of me that's making that prediction. Okay, moving on to Microsoft and Bethesda. They're having a single showcase that's going to be in June 12th. One of the few dates that I do have for showcases right now. But on June 12th, Microsoft and Bethesda, or Xbox and Bethesda. It's the Xbox Bethesda Games Showcase or something. I think at that time there will be a reveal of Avowed, the very Skyrim-like first-person, presumably open world RPG that's coming from Obsidian, which we've seen very little of, teased, but I think we'll get 60 seconds or less of gameplay for Avowed sometime this summer. Probably, if we're going to get it, at that June 12th event. And there will be no release date given. I think that's going to come sometime in the fall or before Christmas. I think it's very unlikely they're going to want to position this to accidentally compete with Starfield coming out in November. And so I think they'll want to remind us that it exists and that it's coming, but I think they're going to wait until first half at least of 2023 before this thing releases. So my prediction is there will be some kind of Avowed reveal with 60 seconds or less of gameplay and no release date information, at most the year. The developer Obsidian said in mid-2021, we are looking forward to showing off what we've been working on soon. And so that's why I think that there's a good chance that, maybe there was a delay between, then and now, but I think we're going to see certainly something of Avowed based on that comment. Starfield, I think is, this is not a bold prediction at all. It's going to get the full reveal treatment like Skyrim did, which was a 22-minute reveal. I went back and checked. Fallout 4 got a 34-minute presentation the summer before it released. I'm going to kind of go between those somewhere and say that Starfield's full reveal will happen on June 12th, and it will be over 30 minutes long. That's what I'm thinking. Now, Wolfenstein 3, I would love to get news of Wolfenstein 3. There's some doubt as to whether there will be or not, but let's see here. What is this? Oh, I think it's going to be confirmed or announced with some kind of accompanying visual, whether that's a logo or actual moving pictures, I don't know. But there was in December, a senior designer at Machine Games, which is the studio that makes the Wolfenstein reboot games, reportedly mentioned an unannounced game being developed by them alongside Indiana Jones. Now, I would have thought that them working on Indiana Jones would mean, well, Wolfenstein 3 is not going to come until after that. But since the senior designer reportedly mentioned there's an unannounced game being developed alongside Indiana Jones, I think that it could be Wolfenstein 3 and that we are likely to at least get it confirmed or announced in some way with an accompanying visual sometime this summer. That's Wolfenstein 3. Okay. And then, sadly, we have an anniversary coming up. Like very soon after I put up the video version of this, May 1st is the 20th anniversary of The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, which is a greatly beloved game by many fans of that franchise. And especially based on their treatment of the Skyrim anniversary, the 10-year anniversary that we got at the end of 2021, I think that Bethesda at most will have Morrowind game content of some kind, or that they say coincides with the anniversary or something. Elder Scrolls Online. There'll be something that happens on Elder Scrolls Online that will in some way be in recognition of Morrowind. It's going to be really minimal, but there'll be something on Elder Scrolls Online for the 20th anniversary on May 1st. At most, I think there'll be something. I would almost rather they did nothing, but I think there'll be something that's just kind of sad. So anyway, and I've given up on my wish that was on this, this prediction segment since 2015 of getting a Skyrim New Vegas. I don't think that's going to happen ever now. Very sad. But anyway, I actually think it's pretty likely that there'll be nothing from Bethesda acknowledging in terms of like game content. acknowledging the 20th anniversary of Morrowind. Maybe they'll do something for the 25th anniversary in 5 years. But really what I would like is for them to announce that, hey, Morrowind, we were somehow enabling mods for Morrowind on Xbox. I know that would require probably a unique release of Morrowind, but it wouldn't even require like upscaling the graphics or doing it would just require something mechanically behind the scenes to enable the installation of mods for Morrowind on Xbox. And I think that would be super, super cool. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's what I would really love in a few days here at the 20th anniversary for Morrowind. Okay, moving along to game companies now not attached to consoles. Ubisoft, one of my favorite video game companies in recent years, at least for the content that they produce. Let's see here. Specifically, their open world content. Really, I'm pretty satisfied. I don't really want anything from them right now. I got plenty of Ubisoft games that I'm playing. But the prediction I'll make for Ubisoft is that we will get an announcement of some kind of Old West Far Cry game that is coming fourth quarter of 2022 or first quarter of 2023. Where do I get that from? Well, two places. The timing I get from Far Cry 4 and Far Cry 5 both had basically new standalone games that were clearly reusing assets from the main game that had come about a year before. So Far Cry 4 got Far Cry Primal, which reused a lot of the same map but made it like into caveman days. And then Far Cry New Dawn used a lot of the same map of Far Cry 5, but made it like post-apocalyptic and stuff like that. And those games were 11 months and 15 months apart, respectively, I believe, unless I got that order reversed. Anyway, give or take a year, right? And so I think that since we just had Far Cry 6 released last fall, that it's a decent guess that there'll be some kind of standalone expansion, and I'm going to go above and beyond that and say that it's going to take place in the Old West. Why do I say that? Because they introduced, I don't think it was in any previous Far Cry game, they introduced horse riding in Far Cry 6. And that was really kind of an unusual thing to introduce. It was takes place roughly in the modern age. And so I'm like, why would they do that? Unless maybe they were thinking ahead and wanting to introduce this now and then maybe refine it and expand on it more. I've thought for years that it would be cool to, since they're, clearly okay with exploring different time periods in the Far Cry games, with Far Cry 6 being the New Dawn being post-apocalyptic and Primal being like way, way old to the point that you're not even using, gunpowder guns. You're using bows and arrows and spears, and that's about it, So I think it's very reasonable to think that they would explore the Old West at some point, and I think one of these standalone expansions is the perfect way for them to do that, given their history. And again, that horse riding really makes me think Old West is coming Q4 22 or Q1 23. Okay. Moving on to Capcom. Dragon's Dogma 2. This was, there was this NVIDIA leak that a lot of people and commentators in the industry have been talking about that happened back, I believe, in September 2021. And it's a list of games that are apparently coming to PC at some point, and most of them, you can assume, are also coming to consoles. And I don't want to say it's been hit or miss. There's been some, I think, that have not panned out, but there's a surprising number that just again and again, there's games being announced that were on that list. And among those are the next two I'm going to mention. The first one, Dragon's Dogma 2. This was included in that... this was also reportedly included in a Capcom data leak, which that leak suggested quarter 2 of 2022, which at this point, that would have been delayed. I mean, I think we would have gotten some kind of an announcement now. So but I think that it could still be coming this year. And anyway, I just predict that it will be announced. It will be confirmed by Capcom this summer. And man, I would love to get an open-world Monster Hunter-inspired RPG with fast travel. I never really quite got into Dragon's Dogma 2. I tried it a couple of times. Ultimately, the lack of unlimited fast travel just kind of kept me from really sinking my teeth into it. Maybe third time will be the charm at some point if I try it again in the future. I liked a lot of what it was doing, and it was clearly in its combat exploring some adaptation of ideas from the Monster Hunter games with, mounting monsters and, approaching monsters in different ways based on their strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that. So I think it would be really cool, especially given the popularity of Monster Hunter World, had that just exploded and became by far the best-selling game of all time for Capcom. I think it would be reasonable to assume that we'll see more Monster Hunter elements in Dragon's Dogma 2. But anyway, yeah, I think that will be announced, and it would be great to get a date for it this year or early next. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Dragon's Dogma 2 going to get announced by Capcom, and then I think it's reasonable to predict there will be some kind of Monster Hunter 6 reveal. Monster Hunter 6 was how it was labeled in the NVIDIA leak. World released in January 2018, and Monster Hunter Rise released in March 2021. A lot of that was based on I don't want to say assets, but I mean it looked very similar to Monster Hunter World and largely played like Monster Hunter World. So I don't think that probably took as much effort and, reinventing of the wheel to put out. So I think it's reasonable that there would be some kind of a reveal, some kind of an announcement with some kind of visual to go along with it for Monster Hunter 6 or that Monster Hunter something else, whatever they're going to call it. I don't know. But, that would be great. For a while I thought, oh man, I really want the next Monster Hunter game. I'm actually not sure that I do. I mean, World was my favorite game of 2018, but I've put just under 1,000 hours now into Monster Hunter World. Still haven't technically fought and defeated every monster in the game. There's just two. Two that are designed for single player hunting. Anyway, so. But I think with all the time I put into it, I'm like, I don't know if a new game is going to be new enough. Because I was in hearing from other Monster Hunter fans that were getting excited about Monster Hunter World. It's like they'd played the game the series long enough that they knew these monsters and were like, oh yeah, this guy, he's gonna be like this. This monster this is what he's gonna do. And I'm like, I don't know if I want another Monster Hunter World unless there's a very different roster of monsters, or at least a lot of new monsters that I haven't fought before in Monster Hunter World, and significantly new gameplay elements with maybe some increased, even more quality of life elements, and I don't know, give like those true blue hardcore fans that don't want more quality of life give them some options, like let them keep trophies on and have everyone else turn their trophies off. I'd be fine with that. But monster AI changes would be another way to freshen up that game for me. So I definitely want to see more Monster Hunter and the next iteration after World. But I really would like it to be significantly different and upgraded in some way that I can't really put my finger on yet. I'll maybe know it when I see it. But so anyway, yeah, some kind of Monster Hunter 6 reveal I think is probably coming. So I'm going to predict that for Capcom sometime this summer. Moving on to Square Enix. December 18th is the 35th anniversary of the original release of Final Fantasy on the Famicom or NES. And they've got a special website that's for the 35th anniversary, and so it looks like they're going to at least try in some way to celebrate this, to acknowledge this. The Pixel Remaster console, the Pixel Remaster has already come out on PC. That was announced, I think, at last year's E3 or summer season. It's been rumored by a known leaker that it's going to be coming in 2022 to Switch, which presumably at the same time it would come to other consoles as well. So I think we'll get a release date for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster collection for consoles. I think that also Final Fantasy 16 will be mentioned in some way, but will have no specific date associated with it. At most, it will be given a year that it's releasing, which will be 2023 or later. So that's what I'm thinking for Final Fantasy 16. Looking forward to that as well. It looks like it's going to be going back to more of the fantasy setting roots of the series instead of leaning so hard into sci-fi like they have been more and more, which sounds great to me to get back to fantasy more. I don't know if the combat system is going to be anything I'll enjoy based on my experience with Final Fantasy 15. We'll see. But yeah, I think 16 is going to get mentioned in some way, but with no specific date, and at most it'll get a year in 2023 or later. Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster. This is another one that was part of the NVIDIA leak. And June 20th is the 25th anniversary of the Japanese release date, which was the first release date for Final Fantasy Tactics. And so if there's a remaster coming, I think we'll get news of it on the 20th, or maybe even a release. I think that's pretty likely. But so I'll say that at least we'll get a release date, like a actual date. Also, Tactics Ogre Reborn was trademarked recently by Square Enix. And that is a series that is almost identical in playstyle, in look, in all the different elements to Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster. In fact, it predates FF Tactics, and the same the mastermind, the head developer behind Tactics Ogre, was tasked with creating Final Fantasy Tactics. And so we could be seeing some kind of a return to that franchise. Maybe, I don't know, the FF Tactics Remaster will actually be rebranded as... That would be weird. They wouldn't rebrand it as Tactics Ogre. But maybe FF Tactics Remaster will just be kind of like the forerunner of a planned revival and remaster of some of these Tactics Ogre games, which would be kind of cool. Let's see. Dragon Quest XII, The Flames of Fate. This was announced last summer, if memory serves, and I think we'll get a new teaser, or maybe even as much as a trailer. I don't know if it'll be gameplay, but maybe kind of a cinematic something or other. But new teaser, new trailer, something more than just that logo that we got last year, with a 2023 or later year attached to it. Dragon Quest XII, The Flames of Fate. Looking forward to seeing more of this game. The developers has said it's going to have a more serious, realistic vibe to it, and so I'm definitely ready to get out of the cartoony aesthetic of that the Dragon Quest series has had for so long. So yeah, Dragon Quest XII, The Flames of Fate, new teaser or trailer with a 2023 or later year attached to it. Only one guess for Konami, and that is that we'll get a Castlevania DS Collection release date, or it'll just get stealth released sometime this summer. Now, I don't have any evidence or reasoning to go on this except for Colin Moriarty. I drove out to California a few years ago to be on his Fireside Chats podcast, and had a great time. And afterward, as he was seeing me out and we got down to the street, I said, "Oh, can I ask you a quick gaming question?" And I asked him to give me a Colin was right moment and predict when we were going to see the Castlevania Advance games, and on new consoles. And he said, let's say next year. And indeed, although it came late in the year, it did come that next year. And then more recently, probably about, a year and a half ago now, when I had him on the Christian Geek Central YouTube channel to interview him. No, this was more recent. This was when I was on his show in January, Sacred Symbols Plus. And I asked him to give me another Colin was right moment and tell me, when are we getting these DS games? Because it's the stencil thing that makes me, wonder, when are they going to come? And they're going to have to do something to remove the need for that little touch stencil control scheme that's part of the gameplay. Nevertheless, he seemed pretty confident in saying that it would be coming this year, 2022. So that's what I want. I want a release date or a stealth release date, and I'm going to actually predict. It's always possible we won't get either of those in the window. It could be a stealth release in October, but I'm going to predict gets a release date sometime between now and August 12th, or it stealth releases sometime between now and August 12th. Some of that's wishful thinking, some of that's just relying on the expertise or the good instincts of an actual analyst. But yeah, Castlevania DS Collection. is what I'm thinking. And then, let's see here, getting closer to the end here, THQ Nordic has already announced they're working on a remake of Gothic. I've become a little bit more interested in Piranha Bytes, which is the studio that is responsible for the Gothic series, since discovering a love for Elix, which my first impression of that game was like, oh, this is kind of rough, and I ultimately gave up on it about 15, 20 hours in, but then picked it up again after trying Elix 2, and discovered that I was somehow differently wired now and could really, really enjoy Elix. And so it's now, I think, one of my favorite games of all time. Looking forward to getting into the second one. So I've got my eyes on Piranha Bytes more than I would have in the past. And this Gothic remake, I think, based on just kind of how they've been talking about it, the news that they put out there, I think that it's very reasonable we'll get gameplay of the Gothic remake at this THQ Nordic event, probably August 12th, and a release window, which I will define as a year and some other more specific information, like quarter this, quarter that, or a month. I'm not saying they'll give a date. I don't know if they will, but I think we'll get year and some kind of more information that would constitute a window for the Gothic remake. I'm also going to, this is a bit more bold and less evidenced, but I'm going to predict there will be an announcement from THQ Nordic for a Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning sequel. They remastered the first one and put it out as Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. They made a brand new expansion in Fatesworn. Both of those, I believe, came out last year, or maybe last year and then early this year. I can't remember exactly. But, they wouldn't have put time into that unless they were, I think, testing the waters to gauge interest in a potential sequel to Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, which got really solid reviews and is loved by a lot of people. The company just went under, didn't handle their finances well, but a lot of people really love Kingdoms of Amalur and would love to see a second one. I'm among them. And so based on the attention that THQ Nordic has given to that game, I don't think their plans are done. I think that we will get an announcement. That's what I'm going to say. It's somewhat wishful thinking, a little bit of evidence based on the investment they've already made in the IP, but I'm going to say Kingdoms of Amalur sequel announcement sometime this summer. And then also THQ Nordic Saints Row coming August 23rd. It's been delayed one or two times this year. I think we'll get a blowout on that during their presentation that's going to be 20 minutes or longer. And I'm looking forward definitely to getting a lot more information about Saints Row. I really enjoyed 2 and 3 and a good amount of 4, although it did start to jump the shark. Agents of Mayhem is fine in brief spurts, but I mean it really jumped the shark and went in a different direction, even though it's kind of a spin-off of Saints Row. It doesn't have the magic that that 2, 3, and 4 really had for me. So what I'm seeing of Saints Row, this kind of reboot, looks like it could definitely be my cup of tea, but I mean there's still a lot I don't know. So I'll look forward to that predicted by me 20-minute or longer presentation by THQ Nordic on August 12th before it releases on August 23rd. I think that's very, very likely. And then my final prediction is just a miscellaneous one, and that's BioShock 2022. That was also part of the NVIDIA leak, labeled as BioShock 2022, I believe. And so there was also, I think this was announced by Colin Moriarty that it's possibly targeting 2022, supposedly in 1960s Arctic. Like the sound of both of those things, but I mean, development with COVID and all that kind of stuff has been a bit unpredictable, so I don't know that I'm not confident that it'll be released, even though they were targeting 2022, but I think we're going to get an announcement, and I think we'll get more than a logo. So BioShock 2022, looking forward to that prediction coming true. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I always like to remind myself and encourage you guys to remember as well during this time of year when we could really get hyped about all kinds of gaming stuff, to try and keep our expectations in check, try to develop some contentment. And this year I'm going to share some slightly different verses with you than I've shared in years past. And these verses are from Psalm 16, which has really become a valuable psalm to me to come to again and again. For about a year, I was in it every day, I think. And verses 4 through 6 of Psalm 16 say, "The sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. lips. Yahweh is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. And so I think the parallels that we can draw from this are that, today people, it's like pagan worship and idols and stuff like that is not near as rampant as it was when this psalm was written. But the new quote-unquote gods that people are chasing after today are materialism, are the next fix of cool entertainment in the case of many of us geeks. And it's so easy to get caught up in just living for that next exciting thing that's going to come out in a few months, or that we get to do or play after our workday is done. We just are always living for these geek experiences. And there's just sorrow that's attached with that. The more we pursue pleasure, the higher a priority we make it in life, what happens in time is the more empty our lives become. And a lot of people find themselves depressed when they are so single-mindedly pursuing pleasure and finding that it leaves them empty or angry or frustrated or disappointed. It just falls short. It can't ultimately fulfill. And so when I think about that as kind of like a god or a philosophy or a religion of this age that many people are unwittingly pursuing, I want to say to myself, in recognition of that, the sorrows of those who run after that stuff will multiply. And so I'm not going to participate in that. As the psalmist says, their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out or take their names on my lips. I'm really going to try and not get caught up in the hype cycle and living for entertainment and always in anticipation of entertainment. Verse 5, Yahweh is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. That there is great fulfillment to be found, even in this life, but certainly in eternity, as we pursue Yahweh and recognize that He is our great reward. He is the reason that we're able to even enjoy entertainment, because He made us the way that we are, to respond to certain stimulus the way that we do. That's all credited to Him. Of course, in addition, people are involved in making those things, but all they're doing is making things that they know people will respond well to because of how people are wired, right? So anyway, Yahweh is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Referring to like property lines. When I look at what's been allotted to me, man, these boundaries have fallen in really good places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. Both things that I can take hold of and find fulfillment in now, in living in sync with what God wants for me in this life, and then also that I can look forward to and anticipate in His eternal kingdom and in resurrected bodies without all the frustration and boredom and all the other shortcomings of life that disappoint us. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm trying to have my mind as I go into stuff like this. And it is a battle, but I hope that you will join that battle with me. That's all I've got for now. Stay tuned. I'm going to post content reacting to various video game news as it happens from now through August 12th. As I said, some of the smaller or less earth-shattering announcements I may react to and comment on exclusively on the Christian Geek Central podcast. So be sure to subscribe if you want to get all of my thoughts on video games this summer. And other big news items that have a good chance of also being reacted to on the CGC YouTube channel. So I hope that you will stay tuned for that. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But for now, that's all. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Do you like games? I like games. Do you like games too? I like games too. I like games too.